Now, everybody argues if they should get the inside cabin or a balcony. But there is one specific cruise cabin category that ruins more cruises than seasickness. New cruisers book this just to save money, but they end up not getting as much sleep throughout the cruise. Today, we're going to go over what cabin not to pick the first time and what cabin you should pick instead. My name is Shane with Mapbound. Let me know in the comments below where you plan on booking your first cruise cabin or where your cabin's been in your previous cruises. The biggest first time cruiser mistake is not looking at the deck plan. Location matters more than the cabin size. A cruise ship is a moving building, so remember they're going to have restaurants, theaters, nightclubs, gyms, and even machinery. Noise travels differently on ships than they say would in a hotel or in, say, your home. Most cruise ships are made of metal, where a lot of other buildings are made with either concrete or drywall with insulation. Now, before we do this, let's go over the names of certain parts of a ship and where they are and what they mean. So first off is the bow, the front of the ship. This is when the ship is moving forward. This is the leading edge of the ship. Now, the back of the ship is called stern. And then the left side of the ship, when you are facing the bow, is called the port side. The right side of the ship, when facing the bow, is called the starboard side. When someone says midship, that usually means the center section of this ship between the bow and the stern. If you hear somebody say upper deck, that's the higher levels of the ship, obviously. And of course, lower deck means the opposite. They're closer to the water line, the lower deck. Now, towards the center of the ship is considered inboard. Towards the outsides of the ship, it's called outboard. Those are pretty easy to remember. Now, when someone says forward, that means moving toward the bow. If someone says aft, that means moving towards the stern. And then just a few areas too, just so you know, the bridge is where the captain, the officers are controlling the ship. The Lido decks, especially on cruise ships, are usually like the pool area or the buffet area. And then the promenade means usually around the area where there's shopping. Most of the times it's indoors. And then the gangway is usually where the door, the ramp, where you enter and exit the cruise. Now, a good memory trick to think of is port and left both have 4 letters. So port means that it's the left side of the ship. Now, there are other areas that are labeled on cruise ships. These are the main ones that, especially when you're booking your cruise cabin, but it is nice to know what they mean when they say bow versus stern. Cabins stack vertically, so what's above you and below you actually matters more than the square footage. And a lot of first cruisers, myself included, tend to shop by price category instead of surroundings. What people tend to look for when they're booking is whether it's a window or a balcony, inside cabin. They also look at what size the cabin is and what size the bed is. And then, of course, everybody is also looking at price. But a lot of first-time cruisers ignore the menus above their heads, or maybe they're close to some engine or mechanical rooms. Then also, of course, keep in mind that if there's any service corridors above, which in turn can all cause noise inside your cabin. One of the first cabins you should avoid is cabins under public decks. Anything with a pool deck above it, nightclub, buffet, gym, or anything with a lot of Lido chairs would be something that I would avoid. A lot of times ships are on schedule. You can have 5 a.m. cleaning crews, moving chairs around, making noise. Not intentionally, just drag it around the floor, and it could make it so you don't sleep as well. Also, there could be midnight cleaning crews going, moving chairs too as well. Those can potentially also be heard in the cabin. And also, all of those would have foot traffic noise, whether it be people who are enjoying themselves or the crew cleaning up or getting ready for the next guest. And a big one is from those music venues above you. If they have a lot of bass, those can also be a problem too as well, because you may be able to hear them in your cabin. So again, ships are not like hotels or homes. They're insulated differently and they're made of different materials. So sound does travel differently. And it could be that it's not occasional noise, that it's actually scheduled noise that happens on a daily at the same time. The second worst would be the very front forward cabins, because the ship pivots in the front and the waves are more amplified at the front. So this can in turn cause a lot more motion that you feel while you're in your cabin. Another thing to look out for, not only is it mechanical rooms that may make noise, but also the anchor is usually in the front, would make some noise too as well. And if it's close to your cabin, you may be able to hear it. Now, because of all of this, in the front, motion sickness is more prevalent. There are a lot more creaking sounds, as well as during docking, there's a lot more vibrations. The key thing to keep in mind is that the front of the ship, even though it's a calm ocean, the front of the ship feels it first. The third room that I would avoid is the very back, especially on lower decks. With this area, you increase your chance of hearing engine vibrations, feeling propeller turbulence, and walks everywhere seem to be longer. Now, the back isn't always terrible, but it is a little risky, especially if it's going to be your first time cruise. My second cruise that I went on, the captain told us that at one of our ports of call that we would have to board the ship 2 hours early due to a big storm coming, which is fine. I understand. The captain wants to make sure we're safe. We want to be safe as well. So no big deal, 2-hour early departure at a port. But that night and during the day, the boat was moving more than normal. And I have to say I was in the back of the ship and I definitely could feel it doing the ups and the downs more than when I was, say, in the middle of the ship where the people I was with were staying. Honestly, it didn't affect me whatsoever. I went to sleep fine. But just keep that in mind if you are somebody who is going to be more sensitive to that. Now, what I would do when it comes to booking, especially on your first cruise, is more of a safe area zone. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have any issues, but it definitely helps lower the risk of you having any issues while you're on the ship. So my ideal place would be mid-ship, but also it would also need to be mid-height. So you have rooms above you as well as rooms below you. You basically are circled around cabins instead of having any kind of public venues above you or maybe any mechanical equipment nearby. That to me would at least lower the chances of you being in a more uncomfortable room. Because what you want is you want something to buffer in between the noisy spaces, and that's what those cabins around you will help do. Now, another thing, if you are unsure about if you're okay with crowds, if there's going to be too many people on the ship, I highly recommend you get in a balcony. You're going to have more space and you're still going to be able to enjoy the ocean. And anytime you do feel like you don't need to be around people anymore, then you can venture to the balcony and still enjoy the beautiful ocean view. Now, inside I'd be okay with if you sleep heavy, you like it dark when you sleep, as well as quiet, but I would definitely still follow the midship rules. Midship, cabins above and below you at mid-deck height. Why this matters more than price is a bad cabin equals a bad cruise for a lot of people. People will tend to blame the crowds on the ship or maybe the motion of the ship and even the cruise line, but really they're exhausted from poor sleep because they picked the wrong cabin. It's been my experience with my 25 plus years of international travel that cranky people from lack of sleep can ruin a vacation. This is why the cabin that you choose is important. So keep in mind, the worst cabin isn't about size, it's more about placement. So for your first cruise, mid-ship, mid-level, keep the cabins surrounding you. Choose stability and quiet so that your first cruise can be a very happy, memorable experience. My name is Shane with Mapbound. Please like and subscribe and follow me on Facebook. Check out my recommended cruise products. Also, don't forget my website, mapboundtravel.com. See you on the next one, and remember, travel is life.